Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. Gavin, Alex Wolf, and it's that time of year. Knicks basketball is officially back tonight, so we break down everything we want to see in the preseason.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, and today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. We want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, because if you're actually doing that, that would make you an everydayer, and therefore one of my best friends. It's a tough list to crack. I have at least 5. And we wanted to remind you to subscribe on YouTube and hit that notifications bell so you never miss an episode. And then if you want to take our relationship to the next level, subscribe to our Subtext. The link is in the description of every single episode, and then we will text you all of our thoughts on the New York Knicks, and you can text us back all your thoughts on the New York Knicks, and we can have a great conversation. But who would you be talking to? I'm Gavin, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. He is Alex Wolf, editor-in-chief of The Strickland, the greatest Knicks website on the whole wide interwebs. You can check them out on all forms of social media at thestrick.land, and we are rolling forward, Alex. Our initial thoughts on the preseason game number 1 tonight against the new look Boston Celtics. Very exciting stuff. What's going to be the first thing you're looking for in the Knicks maiden voyage and then throughout the 4 preseason games?
Yeah, it's crazy, right? That we're already here. Feels like the postseason just ended, but yeah, we find ourselves right on the precipice of a brand new season again. I think first and foremost is going to be the new look rotation. Like, I think this is the biggest thing that the Knicks have. It's sort of honestly like a seismic shift when you consider who the head coach is. The fact that they have this roster set up the way that they do, where they're more or less forcing him to say, you're either going to play Josh Hart or perhaps RJ Barrett at the 4, or you're going to, play Jericho Sims there, I guess, but you probably shouldn't do that. That they've sort of forced Tibbs' hand to go smaller this year. And it's interesting in that respect, but also because of how it's going to affect the guard and wing rotation, how those minutes are going to distribute. I'm really intrigued to see because, you now have Brunson, obviously, who's going to soak up a ton of minutes. You have Grimes, who, Tibbs has already gone on record saying is in there as the starter, barring any changes prior to the season. And I mean, we saw how much he loved and trusted Grimes down the stretch of the postseason, like the famous 45 minute game that he played where, he guarded Jimmy Butler on one leg and all that stuff in the playoffs. Like, clearly this is a guy that Tibbs loves and wants to play big minutes. But then you have Dante DiVincenzo, who they just signed, who's extremely capable. You have Emmanuel Quickley, who should have won 6th Man of the Year last year and is also extremely capable. And then, you've got also RJ Barrett still technically there at the 3 spot. And Dante or Grimes could maybe shift down there from time to time. But it's a lot of talent and very few minutes to go around. And so Tibbs, maybe more than any other coach, uses the preseason, I feel like, to kind of show what he's trying to do for real. Like, he doesn't just throw stuff at the wall in the preseason. He kind of throws out what he's actually thinking, like, okay, this is what I've seen. This is what I want to do this season. And we're going to do this pretty much every single preseason game just to get ready for what we're going to do in the season. And so I think we'll have a pretty good idea just by the end of today, kind of where his head is at and thus where the rotation is going to be for this team going into the season.
Yeah, I went back and looked at last year just out of curiosity, because that was kind of my memory too. And I think he's going to play the lineups that he wants to play, and he's going to play the starters like a healthy proportion of the minutes they would normally play. But I believe last preseason, they topped out at RJ Barrett playing 33 minutes in the 4th game. And I don't think any of the starters went over that. So I don't know if this will be like an 100% accurate representation of what the minutes are going to look like in the regular season. But we're going to get a pretty good idea, and we're going to get a pretty good idea of who his priority is in certain contexts and whether it will just be decided on a game-to-game basis. Like the other day when I was talking to Ariel, and check out that podcast, a rare Saturday drop if you missed it, about Emmanuel Quickley, I was kind of making the case that I think he's earned the status of basically however he's playing on any given night, he should be in the closing lineups. I don't think Tom Thibodeau is necessarily going to default to that. I think it's going to be kind of an open book between DiVincenzo, Quickley, Grimes, RJ, and Hart. And basically out of those 5 guys, whichever 2 are playing the best on any given night, those are going to be the ones out there. And maybe DiVincenzo and Quickly would be a little small. Harden and RJ would be a little bit short on shooting, but obviously that didn't stop Tibbs from starting them for a good chunk of that Heat series. So that's going to be interesting to see how he closes games, particularly if the Knicks have a close game down the stretch of a preseason game. The other thing I'm really looking at with the preseason is if he's willing to mix and match lineups. Obviously, that has been an issue in the past, that he's loved those hockey shifts. Last season, we saw a little bit more variability in terms of particularly towards the end of games, who would be in there and going away from that just a tiny bit. But it still seems to be his preference. And for me, a lineup I would really like to see is Quentin Grimes getting some minutes with the bench. Like just looking at it, that would be Emmanuel Quickly, Dante DiVincenzo, Quentin Grimes, Josh Hart, Isaiah Hartenstein. I mean, the combination of ball handling, shooting, passing, defense in that lineup would be super fun. Obviously, they would be kind of small, but I don't think most bench units can really punish them with that, Alex. But then you lose RJ with the bench, and RJ, obviously, it's so helpful for him to play with all that shooting around him. So that's kind of an interesting balance to strike, but that's a group that I would hope would get a little bit of run in the preseason just to see what they can do.
Yeah, I was actually going to say I think that lineup, but with RJ instead of Grimes, intrigues me a lot too. Because then you have this situation where you can sort of have, depending on who the backup four is, in there on the other team, you can have RJ or Josh Hart defend them. I think RJ has proven to be pretty effective just due to his bigger build, at defending fours, the very few times we've ever seen him do it. And it's something that, could sort of mask whatever defensive deficiencies he might have. We've seen this work for truly horrendous defenders in Knicks history too. I mean, that was what made Kevin Knox look like a half decent defender, is if you can put him up against someone who's, maybe a little bigger than him, but then other quickness, attributes that he has can look better. He can stay in front of them better because it's easier to keep your feet in front of a nominal four on the other side. So maybe that would kind of help with whatever defensive deficiencies that RJ has, to be able to just kind of, throw him out there against the opposing team's backup four and have Hart more or less be like the three, because I do think that some of what you get with Hart with the rebounding goes away a little bit if you have him at the four, just because then instead of kind of swooping in to grab these rebounds and using his timing, like crashing in from the perimeter to grab them, instead he's kind of right in the thick of it. And that might expose his size, which is really, he's sized more like a shooting guard. He just plays a lot bigger than he is. So that's a lineup that intrigues me a lot too. But to your point, I think it'll be interesting to see too, if it's a 9-man rotation and if Tibbs sticks with that, because essentially that is going to mean that he's going to commit to playing small, because there's no 9th guy there, or 10th guy, I guess, that really should be playing. If he decides to throw Sims out there, even for, some stretches like that, that would be a little concerning to me, at least in the first game. Like maybe if second or third, fourth game, if they feel like they've nailed things down, fine. But the first game, to me, from what I can remember, always seems to be when Tibbs tries to try out what he really wants to do. And for that reason, if we see Sims come out in this first game, in anything other than pure garbage time at the end, I might be a smidge concerned.
Yeah, I think to your point on the lineup you threw out there, which to be clear is presumably what the Knicks bench unit is going to be this year, post the Hart trade, especially RJ was getting a ton of run with the bench, and that was a great avenue to open up the floor for him as he demanded. Oh, not demanded. He kind of casually took a shot at the Knicks and said, what was your success with Team Canada? Oh, the lane was open. So you can get a little bit of that with Isaiah Hartenstein on the floor. And those two, Hartenstein and RJ, showed great chemistry. So that's going to be kind of a cool thing to watch to build on. But I am interested to see who opposing power forwards guard, because obviously it depends on how big the guy is. Because I was what we can talk about in next segment, but I was kind of going through all right, who are actually going to be the backup fours that the Knicks go against, and for the Celtics, it's sort of an open question. You could have someone like O'Shea Brissett out there. You could have Jason Tatum with the bench unit. You could have KP getting some time with the bench, playing that lineup. And obviously if it's KP, that's a matchup nightmare on one end of the floor. It'd be a matchup nightmare for him on the other end of the floor. But against someone like Minnesota, it's Kyle Anderson, where that's a pretty normal matchup, regardless of who's guarding. But against more traditional fours like them, either trying to track RJ on the perimeter or having to find Josh Hart in transition when he is ahead of steam, just seems like a nightmare for other teams. So as much as there will be certain matchups where other teams can punish the Knicks can go right back at those teams and probably punish them in a pretty similar way going forward. And then I want to get into more so what that looks like and what those matchups will be. But Alex, before I do that, would you mind telling everyone about our good friends over at Gametime?
Yeah, absolutely. And we love our friends over at Gametime because buying tickets can be frustrating, especially if you're looking last minute. You don't want to hit that situation where, you're suddenly having to pay way more money than you want to pay to go see what you want to see. And that's certainly me. I'm the guy that likes to just kind of plan, excursions on a whim, go to a Knicks game just with a day or two's notice and just decide to get tickets. And it could be tough sometimes if that's what you want to do. But you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. And Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. And with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. And I've used Gametime before, and I'll tell you what, it's true. They really do have the best prices. And the view from your seat thing right in the app is so useful. You don't really get that on any of the other apps. You just get the large stadium view. Gametime, straight up, when you click on it, it's like, this is what your seat is going to look like. This is what your view is going to look like. Makes it for a really informed purchasing decision. Gametime is also the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. So you can see the view from your seat. You get an all-in price that shows you your total up front. So you're getting a great deal without hidden fees. And you can buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, and we're back in to continue talking through the Knicks' first preseason game, what we're thinking we might see, what we're hoping to see. Gavin, what's next on your mind as far as what we could possibly see in this first preseason game?
I want to kind of finish talking about the backup power forward spot, because it seems like at this point, like to your point, I think we're mostly going to get Hart and RJ there, but let's just say the Celtics throw out KP with their bench. Is there a world where Tom Thibodeau says, all right, like gets an evil smile on his face and says, all right, baby, it's Jericho Sims time. Let's go. Let's do this again. Or will the Knicks just match Randall all season long? Like, if the other team has their starting 4, and whether it's with the bench or with the starters, Randall is just paralleling that guy. He's playing the same minutes as that guy. Again, that kind of drives home the importance of Randall not getting injured. But that's pretty curious. I went through like who we're going to see from each team. I already mentioned for the Celtics, it could be Brissett, could be Tatum, could be KP. For Minnesota, it's likely going to be Kyle Anderson. We could get Leonard Miller, who's a pretty talented rookie out of the G League Ignite team. He's 6'10", so there could be a little bit of trouble there. If Karl Anthony Towns plays with the bench, like there's a world where he gets some minutes. I have a feeling like Tibbs would just put Randall back out there, but that would be really fascinating if he said, all right, Josh Hart, like try your hand at that. And the good thing about Minnesota is like they'll usually have like a rim bound center at the rim. So maybe Mitchell Robinson could help a little bit. With Naz Reid, you have to be a tiny bit more worried about the 3-point shot. For the Wizards, whether it's Denny or Kuzma or Gallo, like it shouldn't be an issue. So I think that's going to be an interesting theme all season long, where some teams will basically just be playing like a like-size guy to a Josh Hart or an RJ Barrett. And for other teams, like there'll just be no chance that you can put those guys out there against a true big. And I wonder what kind of balance Tibbs is going to strike between going to Sims, trying to play a little bit small, or just matching Randall.
Yeah, I sort of hope that they're emphasizing the advantages of playing small. And I don't know if Tibbs can fully grasp that, if I'm being completely honest. Like, just the way that his brain seems to work, it's very much, we bring this quote up all the time, the classic Mike Woodson, the East is big man. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like he thinks that way sometimes. And, to his credit, Tibbs really, with this team last year, unlocked something with the offensive rebounding advantage that apparently this whole offseason, if you listen to, or if you read some of the reports that have come out, like other teams have really put an emphasis on offensive rebounding this offseason because of what the Knicks did last year, where they were a bottom 10 3-point shooting team. And, all in all, just not a super efficient team, when you looked at their percentages versus some of their contemporaries, and yet we're a top 5 offense in the entire NBA. And like, based off how high the numbers were last year. They were one of the highest scoring offenses of all time last year, pretty much on the back of how great their offensive rebounding percentage was and how many second chances they got. So, Tibbs is right to some degree that is something that you need to value. And I think the Knicks will mostly for 36 to 38 minutes out of every game, they will, because that's how often you'll have Julius Randle out there. But for those additional 12 minutes or so, I hope that he can wrap his head around the idea of like, okay, let's play differently during this. We'll have Hartenstein just crash the rebounds, in terms of the offensive boards and all that. But the rest of these guys, we should start trying to get out, and transition after defensive rebounds and just try to run the other team off the floor, force them to adjust to us rather than us adjusting to them, which I don't see any world where if you're putting Jericho Sims in the game, that it's not just a move where you're trying to adjust to the other team. Because I really like Jericho Sims, and I think that he's fine. I think that he will hopefully end up like a very solid like backup center at some point in his career. And yet right now, I still think he's a third stringer. I don't think he has much business.
He's not a power forward. Like we can just say
no,
that's simply,
absolutely
right?
not. Yeah, and he doesn't really have any business occupying that space on the floor because he can't space the floor, and neither can the two centers that the Knicks employ. So there's really kind of no way that you could play him out there and expect anything other than a poor offensive showing. So I hope that the Knicks kind of are just ready to embrace what could make a small lineup good this year, because that's going to be pretty key, I think, to making this experiment work.
Yeah, and those lineups were, and maybe again this would be Tibbs's preference. Like they were incredible on defense last year, and part of that was also Deuce was part of those lineups. But you saw they had some of the best defensive ratings of basketball. And there was a point where I tweeted, which feels dumb in retrospect. I was like, I wonder if they trade Obi, because I could just see Tibbs kind of falling in love with it, and now he has another chance to. So that would be my concern. But I'm with you. That's kind of an open question. It'll be fascinating to see what other teams try to do to like kind of push Tibbs's buttons and be like, all right, you really want to have Josh Hart out there? We're going to post him up every single time. Can you sit on the bench and tolerate that, Tommy? I don't know. All right, let's get into like some quick individual stuff in terms of just different guys on the team. We can maybe make these some quick hitters. Like Quentin Grimes is probably the player on this team I am most excited to watch tonight. Obviously, a lot of talk's been made about his offseason work with JJ Redick. I know Ian Begley had, I can't remember if it was a quote or a report, but that they were going to try to get Grimes more shots and make him a bigger part of the offense this year. And my question in response to that was, all right, who is losing shots? And part of it is that Quentin just has to take the shots that are available to him, right? Which means never passing up even a semi-open three, which he got better at over the course of the year. It means when he drives to the rim, until a defense forces him to pass the ball, he needs to drive with the intent to score, which I think as the season went on, he actually got worse and worse in that capacity for someone who was a fantastic finisher. I think it was something like 70% at the rim last year. Like he needs to be super aggressive doing that. And then Alex, something we touched on when we had Prez on the podcast over the summer, but giving him a little bit of the Evan Fournier package from 2 years ago and letting him operate in a two-man game with Julius Randle, let him run off screens and find creative ways to get him shots, because for a Knicks offense that, to your point, that despite being exceptional, was not all that efficient on a shot-to-shot basis, that would be a way to get more efficient, like get one of the better shooters in the league or someone who looks like they could be one of the better shooters in the league, more threes. I think it was something like 45% from distance post All-Star break. I just want him getting up as many threes per game as possible this year. And I think part of that is on him to have a little bit more self-creation, but part of that is on Tom Thibodeau to design plays that get him set up for easy looks.
Yeah, and we've seen sort of the plus and minus of that. The plus is when he shoots like 45%. The minus, I mean, sometimes it feels a little forced, like in the playoffs it did at times, where like against the Heat especially, it was kind of just like, and granted the Knicks had no better option than to just kick it to Grimes and hope that he can make it, but we just saw him miss shot after shot. So like I want to see more consistency from him on a like game to game, week to week, basis, which we saw in the second half of last year. But every one of the young shooters on the Knicks that have shown great shooting ability at some point in their career, other than Brunson so far, because Brunson was the only one that was like, other than maybe like a 2-week stretch last year, he was just ridiculously consistent shooting from three. But other than him, like RJ has his fits and spurts, Grimes has his fits and spurts, Quickly has his fits and spurts, and Grimes, I think especially, could benefit, like you said, from getting a little more in the way of self-creation and trying to find new ways other than just those spot up opportunities, because then sometimes you see one of those threes where come off a screen, off movement or whatever, make one of those. I feel like those are the ones that can kind of motivate a guy sometimes. And the next 3 ones you get there, just spot ups become easier because it's just, oh, I hit the hard one. Now time to go hit the easy ones. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But Gavin, before we get into some more interesting little things, including RJ Barrett, maybe Evan Fournier talk. You invoked the name a second ago. There is something I'm kind of curious about him in this first game. But do you want to let everybody know about our friends at Jase Medical?
Yeah, I would absolutely love to do just that, Alex. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. And as time goes on, it's an unfortunate reality we're living in, but there are going to be more and more natural disasters, and you want to be ready. And that's why Jace Medical offers the Jace case. The Jace case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you a peace of mind, so that you're not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jace Medical makes sure that you have that medication in hand. Jace Medical is simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy, medication delivery, and ongoing consultation and care. So don't get caught unprepared. And you can get $20 off on these life-saving antibiotics today from Jace Medical by using my code LOCKEDON at checkout on jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com, and use our code LOCKEDON. All right, Alex, we are back. Let's just get it out of the way, right? Because it's going to be hanging over us like a dark cloud, a dark French cloud, if we don't mention it right now. Evan Fournier, he had a quote that was like, I don't know, you guys might think I'm crazy, but I'm here to play. I can hoop. And on one hand, he's not crazy. He could probably, like, if you threw him on the Hornets or maybe even the Wizards this year, like, he could put up probably a pretty efficient 22 points per game. Which you can say about, I don't know, maybe 150, 200 people in the world can do that in the NBA. That is a big skill. But unless he dramatically improved on defense over the summer, he's not going to be in this rotation. I think even if he somehow did, I don't see a world where he's playing over Quinn Grimes all of a sudden. I don't see a world where Dante DiVincenzo is, right after signing him, is demoted to the bench. But I don't know. What did you make of those comments from Evan? And do you think there's a chance we see him this preseason?
I think it's really hopeful on his part. I do wonder if it's maybe foreshadowing the Knicks offering him at least a little bit of a chance to show that he's still got it, like maybe giving Tibbs a mandate and saying, hey, I know he's not going to be in the rotation, but like game 3, second half, can you play him like 18 minutes or something, just to give him an opportunity to show, that he could still shoot the ball, whatever. This could be helpful for us as a team because we're still kind of largely holding on to him as like a salary chunk, more or less. But it makes it an easier pill to swallow if you're sending him out and can say, hey, to some team that's maybe trying to just reload and not fully rebuild, and just say like, hey, well, this guy is more than just pure salary. Like, he can at least still shoot like 40% from 3, even if he can't really play defense. So if you have a really good infrastructure, like let's just say like
the Bucks, maybe?
I was actually gonna say the Cavs. If it came up like mid-season and it was like Mitchell wants out and he's getting this over with early, like he wants to go to the Knicks, he's gonna try to strong arm his way there, and the Cavs would obviously still have something to play for. Maybe then you have like Evan Fournier, you could trade him there and make a reasonable case and say, hey, you guys still want to be a playoff team. You have a really good defensive infrastructure on the inside.
Throw us Donovan Mitchell, a few first-round picks. We'll call it a day.
Yeah, we'll call it a day. Donovan Mitchell, a couple firsts. We'll give you, we'll give you Fournier and maybe like McBride, I guess. We can make it work. We'll figure something out. Twist our arm, Yeah. But yeah, maybe something comes along where you can sort of sell him. So I think there's maybe a chance he gets a little bit of playing time just to sort of prove that, and maybe just also so that if the Knicks hit the trade deadline this year and they haven't made a deal with him, they will buy him out. So they might kind of do him a solid and just be like, well, here's a little bit of opportunity to get some tape to sell to people at the buyout market once we get there. But we're going to hold on to you until then because we need to keep the possibility open we could trade you.
All I have to say is like, I totally understand why he's upset. Like I would like, he's kind of, his prime of his career is being wasted away, which sucks. But on the other hand, like, there's like zero self-awareness of there, like him, like if he just came out once and he was like, I understand if I was a better defender, I'd probably be on the floor. That's it. If he said that one time, I'd be like, all right, complain all you want, Evan. But that's why he's not playing. Like, it's not the shooting. Everyone knows he can shoot. He's an awesome offensive player. And the Knicks unfortunately have depth and really good young talent at that position. All right. So we could wrap up with more of those quick hitters. We mentioned Grimes. RJ, I'm looking for more playoff RJ. Like, is he driving to pass the ball a little bit more, like, or at least like when an obvious shot isn't there, is he willing to pass the ball? Is he willing to swing it out? Is he willing to throw a lob to Mitch? Is he willing to run a little 2-man game with Hartenstein? And just kind of the diversity of his usage, his ability to efficiently attack matchups and get all the way to the rim. So again, his playoffs were awesome. I think they're maybe being a little bit overrated in some circles, less so the Cavs series and more so what he did against Miami, where he at times, particularly game 6, really, really struggled with his efficiency. And then Alex, the next thing I'm hoping for is Jalen Brunson pulling up with more confidence. We talked about how efficient he was in terms of his pull-up threes, but how his volume was just so much lower than essentially every other star guard in basketball that has a decent shot. If there's a world where he's, again, like an All-NBA type guy, top 5 MVP type guy, or even just like an automatic all-star this year, it's because he is taking more of those deep pull-up threes. And I have a feeling we could see a little bit of that in the preseason where he kind of starts to test out that new tool in his arsenal.
Yeah, I would love to see that, out of Brunson. I want to see what he was working on, because he definitely came in last year and just sort of further refined all of the things that made him look like a real breakout candidate his final year in Dallas, especially that playoffs, and just said, no, all this is for real. And I'm way better than you even thought that I was. I think that starting off really strong for him is going to be a big point too, because if he wants to reach some of the highs that, he's pretty soft-spoken about this sort of stuff, but I'm positive that he wants to make an all-star team this year. I'm positive that he wants to be in the All-NBA conversation this year and all that stuff. So I think that coming out super strong early would be a huge boon for him in that regard. If he strings together maybe like a few 30-point games early, stuff like that, like he could set that up in the preseason. If he starts showing, these new things in his bag, starts showing out right away, that's always a good place to start and get yourself tuned up and ready for the regular season. Speaking of, I'm curious to see where Julius Randle's at. He sort of implied that because of the ankle surgery, he didn't get as much time to do, I guess, like endurance and cardio training as he wanted this offseason, and instead had to spend a lot more time in the weight room, which based off the media day looks at him, I mean, he looks naturally when you get, he went from his hair being very, very large to like a tight fade now again. So, when you go with that, it kind of makes you look smaller in general, something about the hair going from big to small. But in general, he looked, I think, about as lean as he's ever looked to my eye, not just the hair. But, I guess we'll see how that translates. Like, I'm curious to see if he seems like he's got to kind of get his win back for this whole preseason, or if he's pretty much ready to go. But one thing that is rang extremely true with Julius his entire time with the Knicks is that, much like Tibbs, like what you see in the preseason with Julius is very similar to what you're going to see from him in the regular season. And we saw that in 2020 to 21 when he came out and was so good. And we were like, what is this? What's going on? And then he kept it up for the whole season. We saw it in 21-22 when he came out, and all the way in preseason, even you could start to see like him. And then like that first game against the Celtics, you could see him starting to have that sort of attitude, the like, why am I not being appreciated attitude and stuff like that, which obviously carried through the whole season. And then last year we saw, once again, like the improved bounciness, the better shot profile, all that started manifesting itself in the preseason. And he kept that rolling all the way through the season and got another all-star appearance, another all-NBA appearance under his belt. So I'm very intrigued to see if it's looking like more good Julius based off this preseason. My inclination is probably yes, because I just think that last year was the best situation he's been in with the Knicks, thanks to the presence of Brunson, and nothing has changed this year in that regard. So I can't see anything. There's no like drastic change that could potentially have him in a tizzy going into this preseason. But nonetheless, I'm intrigued to see if he's going to break the what do we call this? Like the odd year curse or the even year curse, whatever you want to call it, based off whether you're talking about the beginning or end of the year. But yeah, the curse that's afflicted him his whole time with the Knicks so far.
Yeah, no, that's a great one. And I like that is such a barometer for what the season's going to be for the Knicks. And I think we both kind of assumed all offseason, like we're going to get basically the same guy we had last year. And maybe based on history, we're going to look like idiots, but I'm hoping that Julius, to your point, proves that wrong. And my gut instinct is he will, but we won't know until we see it. Some other real fast ones. I hope Josh Hart does not pass the open threes. I thought his Team USA run was a good indicator that that's not going to be an issue. He was pretty confident shooting. Obviously, that line is a little bit shorter. And I kind of wish for him the NBA line was a little bit shorter, because he just seems so comfortable from 21 feet. And then 20, you get to 23 and it's like, it's a little dicey, but I'm hoping he shoots. Obviously, just excited. It's going to be cool seeing Dante DiVincenzo in a Knicks uniform. Would be cool if he throws down a big dunk. Would be cool if he has like a 7-minute sequence where he hits 2 or 3 threes. That's just going to be fun. I really have. It sounds strange because like normally when you have a new player who's going to be kind of a key fixture on this team, that's all you would be talking about. But I feel like I can already visualize it, Alex, and I almost know exactly what it's going to look like. It's going to be really good, I think. We'll see if Mitchell Robinson gets some post ups. Emmanuel quickly, more threes, more shots at the rim. The floor is going to be with Obi out and DiVincenzo in. The floor is going to be as open as he's ever played with in his career. Like if he can leverage that to just like beat his guy off the dribble, get to the rim, sometimes spray it out, like have a higher assist rate this year, that would be really good for him. And yeah, that's pretty much it on my end. I'm super excited to have Knicks basketball in our lives again.
Yeah, I would say my last thing that I want to see is just the dynamics of the second unit as far as who's going to handle the ball and how creative they're willing to get, because I do think there's a real possibility where you could have 4 guys on the floor that could reasonably bring the ball down at any given time, and 4 guys that also can really harm you off the ball. If you run out the lineup of this could be Grimes or RJ, but if you run out the lineup of quickly DiVincenzo, RJ or Grimes, and then Josh Hart, all those guys are shown the ability to bring the ball down the floor and set up an offense. All of them, in theory, can shoot the 3. Again, to your point, Josh Hart needs to hopefully, get a little more confident in that arena and be more like post-trade deadline, less like postseason for the Knicks last year. But if they could do that and they can have all those guys out there and, have the possibility of having various people run the offense, which then allows other guys to get open for threes and stuff like that, it's going to be pretty intriguing, especially quickly in DiVincenzo. I think are going to be a really interesting dynamic to see off the bench there. But yeah, I think that's it for me too. So nothing left now but to just wait for the game to start. So we'll see you guys on the other side after this preseason game. But hope you guys are as excited as we are for this thing to start. And we'll talk to you tomorrow to talk about the first preseason game. But until then, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you all soon. Peace out, everybody.
I got it.